Hi there, I'm Mary from DIY Montreal. Today I'm going to show you how to make this original pendant lamp made entirely from wood. I wanted to create a project that required several half-lap joints to put my half-lap joint method to the test. Well, let me tell you, if you want to practice half-laps, this is the perfect project. To make this chandelier, I used 1x2 poplar boards. Although they're called 1x2s, they're actually 3/4 by 1.5 inches. You can get these at any big box store. I started by setting up a stop block at my miter saw. I set it to exactly 12 inches. I put on all my safety gear, then made my cuts. I'm making 4 boxes, so I needed 16 12-inch pieces. You'll also need one extra piece at 5 5/8. You'll find a link to the written article with more details on all the specs of this project, so go ahead and check that out in the description below. Next it's time to make the half-lap joints. I grabbed 8 of my 16 pieces and flipped them on their side. I then lined them up and drew a reference line at 2 inches in from each side. P.S. In case you're thinking of making your own chandelier in a different size, note that there was some math involved in the design to get all the pieces to align, so make sure you sketch it out first. I grabbed the remaining 8 pieces and did the same, this time at 3 3/16 from each end. Here I'm adjusting the blade height on my table saw to get it at exactly half the thickness of the material. If you haven't seen my video on how to make consistent and accurate half-lap joints, you'll want to check that out first. I show a really simple method that guarantees perfect half-lap joints every single time. You can click on the link in the top right hand corner here to watch it, and I'll also leave a link in the description below. As you can see, I used the reference line I drew to line it up with the curve of my crosscut sled. With the setup complete, I started cutting my half-lap joints. Then cut some more, and some more. All in all, this project involved 10 half-lap joints, which translates to 20 notches to be cut out. And let me tell you, it's a messy job. When all your notches are done, you'll end up with 4 boxes, 2 wide and 2 narrow like this one. This box is going to be the top level of my chandelier, so I need to add a cross support in the center that'll connect the chandelier to the pendant light. I roughly centered the small leftover piece and drew a reference line for the half-lap joint. And this is a shot with all the joints cut out. Before glue up, I did a dry fit to make sure that all the pieces fit nicely. One last step before I apply glue is to make a hole for the pendant lamp wire. I used a 3/8 drill bit and made a hole on center. Next I glued each of the 4 boxes together. FYI, you don't need water resistant glue for this, but Type on 2 is all I had on hand. I applied the glue using a glue brush and used some spring clamps to hold it all together while it dried. I also used a wet paper towel to wipe off any squeeze out before it dried, as this would affect the stain's ability to penetrate the wood. After letting them dry, I decided to modify my design slightly by trimming off the corners of the 2 wider boxes. I made the cuts using my miter saw and made sure to apply some painter's tape across the back of the cuts to reduce the risk of tear out. Then of course came sanding. I next moved on to assembling the lamp. I piled the 4 boxes up, making sure to align all the outside edges. I'm going to drill a hole all the way through the 4 boxes, so alignment is important here. I marked the 4 spots where the 4 boxes cross each other. Now, I hadn't really planned this part out, so I had to improvise. I needed to clamp the whole thing together, so I started by moving it onto a small piece of plywood, careful not to move anything. I added a scrap piece of wood across the top on one end, then clamped it all down to the plywood board, and then did the same on the other side. I was then able to move it over to my drill press and drill all the way through using a 3/8 drill bit. I'm using my all-time favorite wood stain, Early American. I'll also be using wood conditioner for this project, but only on the ends. Oops, French there. The wood conditioner will reduce the amount of stain that gets absorbed by the end grain, so it won't be darker than the flat faces. I started by applying the conditioner to all the ends, and while that dried, I went ahead and applied the stain to all the other surfaces. I finished off by applying the stain to all the ends and wiped off the excess using a clean towel. To assemble the chandelier, I used leftover 1x2s that I flipped on edge and added spacers between each level. I also used a pencil to check the holes were aligned as I went. The next part may look easy, but I spent a lot of time figuring out what would hold the chandelier together. And I left out all the time I spent threading rope with knots. Definitely not my best idea. In the end, I decided to use dowels that matched the size of the holes I made. I simply hammered them in using a rubber mallet. I didn't want to muck up the lamp, so I decided not to apply any glue. It was a tight fit after assembly. It was a tight fit, so I'm not too concerned. To finish off, I used a flush trim saw to cut off the ends of the dowels from the top. The saw left a few scuff marks, but I simply touched them up with a little stain. I'm using a pendant light kit with a nice fabric wire. The wiring was really generous though, so I had to cut it down to size. All that's left is to thread the wire up through the lamp. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And if you subscribe to my channel, make sure to tap the bell to get notified every time I post a new video. Thanks for watching!